Yes, we only have one life to live, and it's bold and beautiful with all my children, as long as we don't wind up in a general hospital. Yeah, I was quoting soap operas because the Packers are about to be one again. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Delray. I was going to do shout-outs and get-outs like normal for the Lions versus Packers game, but frankly, it just didn't feel right. Because doing that would acknowledge that it's just another game, right? That you're just going through the motions, that you're going to talk about who performed well versus who didn't, and it wasn't just another game. It was the season ender. So I've decided not to take that route with today's video. Instead, I'm going to do just kind of a recap of a lot of the things that I'm seeing out there from Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, etc. A lot of the things just kind of floating around, and address a good number of them with my take on what is actually going on, what could happen, and just go from there. Now, for the rest of this week, I don't know what it's going to look like. For sure, I'm going to have a video out Wednesday, and for sure, I'll have a video out Friday. And it's probably going to be looking towards the future. I do know that the channel is going to be taking a week off coming up soon. I don't know if it's going to be 3 weeks from now. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. It's now the off season, right? But I do know that I'm going to dedicate a week towards hopefully getting a website up and running and a number of the other projects that I've been chipping away at here and there. So that's going to get my focus soon enough for at least 1 week. But don't worry, all off season long, I will be putting out 3 to 4, maybe even during training camp, a video every single day of the week, just so you can follow along with everything of the Green Bay Packers. So for today, I'm going to cover some of the topics, some of the news, some of what's being talked about, who's coming, who's going, who are they playing next year? Yeah, that's right. That now is completely finalized because all of the standings across the NFL are totally finalized. We now know who's going to be the home games for the Packers next year, who's going to be the away games. The only thing that we don't know is what order these games come in and when the bye is going to be, right? But we do have the conclusive list. So first of all, for the 2023 season at home, coming to Lambeau Field, is going to be the Bears, Lions, and Vikings, of course, the divisional matchups. But other than that, the Saints, the Bucks, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Rams. Now that's an interesting collection of teams. First of all, the Saints. It looks, by all accounts, that they're going to be retaining Dennis Allen as their head coach. Who knows what a lot is going to happen there? Their first round pick was given to the Philadelphia Eagles, so the Saints also in cap purgatory like the Packers. I don't know as if it's going to be a tremendously different team than what we saw this year. Michael Thomas, for all intents and purposes, will probably be gone. The quarterback situation, who knows what that's going to look like for the Saints. So a very interesting team at this time. Buccaneers, similar story. Tom Brady's going to be a free agent. What he does could depend on what the Buccaneers do in the playoffs starting next week. But same thing, team of mass flux. One team that I wouldn't expect a ton of change for would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Whether they're out in the first round or second round, whether they're out, whether they win the Super Bowl, doesn't matter. I just don't see that much changing with the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, and company. Then you have the Chargers. I would imagine that's going to remain pretty status quo. I believe Brandon Staley kept his job by making the playoffs. Then you have the Rams, who, Lord knows what the Rams are going to look like next year. Sean McVay himself doesn't know and may be taken off to go sit on an island for a year. So who knows? Now, the away teams. These are the Packers. These are the teams that the Packers are going to travel to go see. Of course, Bears, Lions, Vikings, all in the division. But then you have the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, that's right. Packers going against Davante Adams in Vegas. Whew, if ever there were a game to road trip to. Then you've got the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, New York Giants, Pittsburgh Steelers. From the outset, basing things on this year, it looks like the away schedule is a little friendlier than the home schedule, but Raiders, who knows what changes could occur there, whether it's going to be Carr, whether it's going to be Brady at quarterback, because that got reported this morning. Either way, Raiders are... We'll see what happens there. Falcons, certainly a young team. Could be a lot of change going on there. Panthers, we don't even know who their head coach is going to be. Broncos, who knows who their head coach is going to be. You know they're swinging for the fences based upon everything that's been reported so far. Russell Wilson will probably still be there. Can they right the ship? Who knows? And then you've got the New York Giants, who I imagine are going to be staying predominantly status quo based upon this playoff run, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can bank on probably Mike Tomlin still being the coach there, Kenny Pickett quarterback. Just some retooling probably going on in Pittsburgh. So a very interesting schedule for next year. A lot of people are asking all these questions about the Packers blowing it up and stuff. I think that schedule shows you there's a few teams on there that may be blowing things up. The Packers are not alone in this situation. The Bears have the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL, and they have $120 million in cap room. Yeah, the Chicago Bears are going to look different next year. But then you've got the Buccaneers, depending on what Tom Brady decides to do. You've got the Rams, who could look drastically different. The Raiders, who could look drastically different. The Broncos, the Steelers. I mean, could be a lot of change. This is going to be a very, very big offseason for the NFL for a number of teams, the Green Bay Packers very much included. So now I've got 6 items here that have just been on my mind all day, things that I wanted to address, things that I think are important to talk about. Before I get to those 6, though, if you're still hanging on to this video, I do have a question for you. If you're a subscriber to the channel, if you've watched a lot of Lombardi Time Brews, I would absolutely love it if you were just to leave a comment saying, what is something you'd like to see addressed this offseason? What is a piece of offseason content that you would look forward to? Obviously, there's the draft, training camp, minicamp, anything that happens with Aaron Rodgers, right? But still, what are things that you'd like for me to dive into, to address? Leave a comment, help me out. That may help steer the direction as we navigate the first offseason for Lombardi Time Brews. So, here are the 6 items that I wanted to address. Number 1, Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, Russ Ball. I'm sorry, you don't have to like it, but they're keeping their jobs. Look, this was Matt LaFleur's first losing season in his career as a head coach. He just signed a contract extension, which I know some people don't think should matter at all. It does in Green Bay. He's not going anywhere. He's well loved in the locker room. He is a good coach. Do I have some gripes about the way that he does things? Yes. And I think a lot of people do, and they are valid. But he is a good coach under a new contract who just had his first losing season, I should say. You're not going anywhere. No matter who the quarterback is, no matter what happens at the roster, not going anywhere. Brian Gutekunst. You could argue he's coming off his best draft class yet. Again, not going anywhere. Russ Ball, only going somewhere if he retires. And then lastly, Mark Murphy. Again, similar story, only going somewhere if he retires. I know some of you will not like that information, but it's true. All of the top executives in Green Bay are safe. One losing season does not make Green Bay move in a reactionary manner to boot a lot of people out. Sorry. It's true. Now, might there be some changes coming to the assistants in the coaching staff? Yeah, there very well could be. Of course, the number one on everyone's mind is Joe Barry, right? Defensive coordinator. Is he going to be sticking around or is he gone? I don't know. Right now, I'm leaning towards he's sticking around. Look back at the last couple of years when Matt LaFleur gets rid of a coordinator, right? Maurice Drayton, special teams coordinator, there was no choice there. The special teams were such a debacle. No, LaFleur never had any public angst towards him, and I don't think he wanted to. I think it was just an acknowledgement that wasn't working, period. They had no choice. But then you look at Mike Pettin, and towards the end of Mike Pettin's tenure, you could tell like LaFleur in press conferences was building up some angst toward Mike Pettin. That angst has not been directed to Joe Barry to this point. So I don't think it's the same situation. One wrinkle I will add in, though. In New York, there seems to be some some smoke behind the fire of, well, New York Jets owner could just completely clean house, fire sale everything, including get rid of Robert Saleh and Matt LaFleur's brother, their offensive coordinator. Now, if Robert Saleh becomes a free agent defensive coordinator, could you see LaFleur hiring his best friend? Could you see him going after his brother to shake awake the offensive side of the ball? Yeah, I could. Now, is that a guarantee that once Saleh hits basically the coach free agency that Matt LaFleur is going to look at Joe Barry and say, peace? I don't think it's that. But look, I mean, I think it would be naive to think that all of a sudden Saleh could come available and LaFleur's just not going to at least entertain the thought. But barring something unforeseen, I mean, he might be being fired right now as I'm recording. Like, let's be real. No one knows. But I'm just saying, I haven't seen the outward angst from LaFleur that he showed towards Pettine at the end. If anything, in recent weeks, he's defended Joe Barry. And not to mention the fact that the defense has been playing remarkably better over the course of the last month. You even could argue that the defense deserved to win the game last night, and it's the offense that let them down. I think there's a very easy argument to make there. So, future Joe Barry. Right now, my gut tells me he's sticking around. Other assistants through, go down the ranks. Yeah, I think inevitably after a losing season, you're going to see changes of some form. I think offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich is a very interesting question at this point. He is a highly respected coach around the NFL. He's beloved in 1265 Lombardi. You can tell because they kept him instead of Jason Outen and others. They made him the offensive coordinator when Hackett left. But the offensive side of the ball needs something to happen, some kind of shakeup. I think everyone's clamoring for Joe Barry, but might be more likely we're going to see some switches on the offensive side of the ball under LaFleur's purview. One thing I can tell you, too, is I wouldn't mind Rich Bisaccia having a little bit louder of a voice in the room. I said yesterday, following the loss to the Lions, that something feels like it just needs a shakeup, right? That they need a Dan Campbell type, that they need an enforcer, somebody on that offense, or someone in that coaching staff. Maybe Bisaccia is that guy. And we'll see if he gets a little bit louder of a voice, perhaps more influence, especially since his special teams showed just a drastic turnaround this year. Number 2, I want to dive into the Aaron Rodgers thing. And obviously, I don't think Aaron Rodgers himself knows right now. I think he's very honest with that. But I do have one very interesting observation that I haven't seen put out there in a lot of other circles. A couple years ago, the season ended and Rodgers said that his future is a beautiful mystery. Or even last year said that he was going to take some time and reflect and decide what he wanted to do. But I think there's an interesting wrinkle this year that we haven't heard Rodgers touch on much. And maybe I'm just reading into it too much, but look, we've seen this situation play out with Rodgers a lot. A very sad season-ending loss, and then he waxes poetic about his future, and they've always kind of sort of been the same. But not yesterday. And that's why I think you can actually take a couple things from it, because it wasn't the same standard lines. He repeatedly said that there has to be mutual interest. It's not just what he wants to do anymore. First of all, he ruled out the money thing, and I actually do believe him. There's a ton of people on Twitter saying, Rodgers said the $59 million doesn't matter. Yeah, bull. I don't look. The dude has money. Okay, I don't think it actually matters that much to him. I just don't. Look, he's got enough money to go to ruins in Costa Rica and go wherever he wants and smoke ayahuasca or do whatever he wants for the rest of his life. He knows that. By all accounts, this is a very intelligent individual who knows what he wants out of life. He's got the money to do it. So I believe him. But I just think it was very telling that he kept on saying that there has to be a mutual interest. But not only did he say that the Packers have to want him back and it has to be mutual interest, but he also touched on questions of should. He touched on, should I still be the voice that leads this team? He's never asked that before. Not that I can recall. Not that I could find. And I think that's incredibly interesting. I think the reflection may be, of course, he's going to keep tabs on what the organization is doing, whether he wants to come back. I don't wonder if there's going to be a little bit more inward reflection this year from Rodgers. Analyzing what he did this year and what he could have done better. Could be looking into it, but I don't know. His quotes last night were different. Don't believe me? Go look at the press conference. It just had a slightly different vibe to it. Especially even thanking media members at the end and calling out a few of them individually for things that he's appreciated over the years. Hit a little different last night than all of the years that we've been playing this game. So, just saying. Number 13, there's a lot of obvious holes on the roster. Yeah, safety, tight end, those are obvious. Even if nothing changes on the roster at all and every single one of the 53 return, look, safety, tight end, like there's still problems. But what the Packers do will determine how many more holes they are. Are they going to retain Mason Crosby? If not, then kicker is a hole. I know it seems trivial, but it's true. Aaron Jones, if he's sticking around. If he's not, then running back is a hole. Defensive line, if they don't retain Jerron Reed. Or how about even a little bit of wide receiver? Yes, of course, you have Christian Watson. Yes, you have Romeo Doubs. Yes, you have Samori Toure if you believe in him long term. But Allen Lazard, I think he's gone. And I think he acknowledges as such looking at his press conference. Randall Cobb, whether he comes back or not may hinge on Rodgers, and part of whether Rodgers comes back or not may hinder on Cobb. So, nah. But beyond that, I think, look, Allen Lazard, I think he's going to go. I think this is MVS. Let's say it that way. I think he's just like MVS. I think the Packers are going to stay talking to him, but at the end of the day, he's going to get an offer, perhaps from Chicago, that the Packers just aren't inclined to match. Spotrac right now has Allen Lazard at a free agent contract valuation of $11 million per year. Are you paying Allen Lazard $11 million a year? Is that something you'd hope for the Packers to do? My gut tells me no. Moving on from that, we know that the offensive philosophy, something happened this year that the playbook just seemed to develop this fissure right down the middle, right? What's the team's identity? We've asked that a ton. Should they be a run-first offense? Can Aaron Rodgers still carry the offense? These are valid questions. I mean, even looking over the last couple of weeks, yes, they've had this run-the-table part 2, but Aaron Rodgers' play hasn't dramatically improved from where it was earlier this year when there were all the concerns about the thumb. He didn't have any 300-yard passing games this year. He had one 3-touchdown game. So that all tells you that the team should be run first, right? But that's not always the way that they operate. And is the way that they pass the ball what LaFleur ideally wants, or are there a lot of concessions being made? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong that those concessions are being made if they are. I'm just saying if you have a coach who's not running his philosophy in full, eventually that becomes a philosophical conundrum and how to operate. NFL philosophies are meant to be all bearing, right? You either run the West Coast offense, or you run this, or you run this, or you run your modification of the Shanahan offense, and of course they're all evolutions kind of coming off of each other. But the truth is, you can't just take from this one and this one and this one and mash them all together. There's a reason that's not done. So, and I know that's a vast oversimplification of the issue, but it's still an issue. And if Allen Lazard is retained, please, for the love of God, Matt LaFleur, on 4th down, don't ever call a jet sweep to your lowest wide receiver again. It didn't fool anyone, which perhaps it makes it even all the more disappointing. Number 5. Look, I'm going to give full credit for accountability. Yeah, full credit. I mean, Matt LaFleur said in the post-game press conference last night that winning can cover up things, mistakes, bad traits about a program, and they need to go back and revamp it all. They need to explore everything with a fine-tooth comb. They need to find where the deficiencies are. Okay, credit. Quay Walker put out a series of tweets this morning apologizing, saying that he talked to the Lions athletic trainer, or one of them, and he praised to God that he can be forgiven for shoving someone. Rasul Douglas put out a tweet saying, yup, I didn't want them to get a free kick. By the way, that's not what he was penalized for. If you think that Rasul Douglas was penalized for knocking away the ball, he wasn't. He was penalized for shoving somebody right after he knocked away the ball. Of which, in his tweet, he did acknowledge, for that, I take full accountability. But here's the thing, and we've seen this a lot this year with this Green Bay Packer team. They say, Matt LaFleur especially, but there's a number of players on the team who have said, yup, this is a problem, my bad. And then they go out and do it again. Matt LaFleur, perhaps the biggest example of them all. How many times earlier this year did we hear, we got to do a better job of getting Aaron Jones the ball? And then the next week, he's got 3 carries at the end of the first half. So, credit for acknowledging the problem. Credit for acknowledging what you have done, Quay Rasul. But if you want to be a better football team, it's not just about diagnosing the problem, it's about fixing the problem. And the Green Bay Packers this offseason have a litany of problems that need to be fixed, not diagnosed. Number 6. Kind of part and parcel with number 5. I think the 4-game winning streak, the Run the Table Part 2 that ended sadly, helped to mask some of the deficiencies of the team that we saw all year. I still believe that there is a culture problem on this team. Can I identify exactly what it is? No, of course not. I'm not in there. I don't think anyone can. But a team that always seems to go on a run just to wither at the end, it's consistent enough to now it's a trend, it's a pattern. And those things don't happen by accident. If you run a trial and you always wind up with the same result, at what point do you stop calling it an anomaly? I'm not saying that this team withers under pressure. I'm not saying that there's no fight in them. I do think, though, that there's a culture problem. And I'm sorry, you just can't tell me that what I saw yesterday was a team that got frustrated and angry at how it was performing. Rasul, Quay, all the chippiness. It was angry about how it was performing. But it wasn't sparked to perform better. It's quicksand, right? Because then the more you struggle, the worse you get. And it's the Packers' entirety kind of this year. I'm sorry, I know some people view that as a very lazy take to say that the team has no heart. But they just went against basically like the epitome of a football team with heart in Detroit, right? And you could see the difference. I even talked about how, and I'm not laying this at the feet of Aaron Rodgers, this is just purely one anecdote, so don't go too far with this, but look, when Jordan Love came in to relieve Aaron Rodgers at the end of the game weeks ago, totally failing on who it was against, but the offense just suddenly had a life to it, didn't it? When is this entire team going to get a certain amount of life into it? And if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm wondering that. You know, not only is it this whole thing, but like, look at going west, going to South Florida. There's predictable times that the team is going to underperform. Basically elimination games. Going out to California. Going deep into Florida. There's enough data now that we could say, look, this isn't anomaly after anomaly after anomaly. This is a trend. So what are we doing that leads us to always having the same result? It's not one person at fault. It's systemic and it's cultural. Find it. Fix it. And that's my thoughts for today. So I will be back on Wednesday again. I I don't know what Wednesday's show is going to be yet. This week we're taking things as they develop. But Matt LaFleur is speaking later tonight, at 5 o'clock, I think his press conference is. So I'll be checking that out. And then I'm sure I'll touch on that on Wednesday. Friday morning, Brian Gutekunst addresses reporters. I'm sure I'll be talking about that on Friday. But then what else we cover this week, we're just going to take it day by day and see how this week evolves and what the news of the week is. But you can be sure that I'll be here Wednesday and Friday providing Packers coverage throughout all offseason long. Thanks so much for checking out Lombardi Time Brews. I hope you're having a great day. And as always, go Pack Go.